APIs are all around us. In fact, 83% of the internet traffic is API traffic. So think about the magnitude. The majority of the internet are actually API communication.
Hello and welcome from the Nasdaq MarketSite. I'm Jarrett Banks, editor of Tech Edge. Joining me today is Roey Eliyahu, the co-founder and CEO of Salt Security. Roey, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get right into it. There's been a lot of talk in the space about APIs. First of all, what are APIs? Can you explain this to folks who may not be familiar?
Absolutely. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. So what does that mean in simple terms? So every day, every one of us, you, me, are using thousands of APIs a day. So what are APIs? APIs are essentially the connecting tissue between your phone, your laptop, any application you would use, like an Uber. When you order an Uber ride, you use an API. If you message somebody on Facebook, you use an API. If you pay on your banking app, you use an API. It's essentially the tube that sends your information from your local device back to the company server. So when I send you a message, let's say, or I pay you, I choose the amount, I choose the address, I choose the bank account, I put everything in the app. Through the API, the phone, the app communicates to the server, hey, I want to send $50 here, as an example, to this and such account. So this is essentially what our APIs are, the tubes, the connecting tissue between all your apps, systems that carry information.
Okay, how widespread is this? Does it touch businesses and consumers?
Yes, absolutely. Every day, every one of us using thousands of API. Every app you can think about when you log in, and I will use the bank example, but it's true for every application. Anything you log into, essentially there is an API behind it. Any information that is displayed to you on any screen that is specific to you, a specific message, a specific transfer, a specific Uber ride, anything, is essentially being used by APIs. So APIs are all around us. In fact, 83% of the internet traffic is API traffic. So think about the magnitude. The majority of the internet are actually API communication.
All right, great. Now you are the co-founder. Give us an overview of Salt Security and tell us how you differentiate yourself in the market.
Absolutely. So what is Salt Security? I started a company in this space about 8 years ago to really help companies deal with these emerging threats of API attacks. So as this API became the connecting tissue for every application, naturally hackers targeted APIs to exfiltrate data. So you have a lot of big breaches in the industry that essentially hackers use the API to exfiltrate data of yourself, myself, everyone here, essentially all the information that companies store. That's an easy door. I always give this analogy that companies are like buildings, and the APIs are the door and windows into the building. So essentially, what is the first thing you need to do in order to protect doors and windows? You need to know where they are. So the first thing that Salt is doing is API discovery. We give companies visibility to what APIs they have, because today developers are building more and more APIs, as everything is digital these days. And the security team don't know where all the doors and windows, where all their APIs. So first of all, we help them identify all these APIs. Secondarily, we help them govern the security of those APIs. So we make sure there's locks on the windows and on the doors, nothing is open and anybody can come in and come out. So we basically help them to make sure that when they open a new API, they expose it, it meets all the security requirements, same as you would do for physical security. And the last step is threat protection and mitigation. So we use AI and ML to baseline what is normal behavior for an API. So we know it's really you using the app and not hacker try to probe the API, try to ask for maybe my information instead of your information, right? So we help them identify threats. Essentially, people try to break in and break the door. We help them identify those attempts and block them away. So if I summarize, it's identify all the doors and windows, API visibility, govern, they're being protected correctly, like putting the right locks and the right material. And lastly, identify people try to break in. So those are the three pillars.
Got it. Now, we've seen cybersecurity issues quite a bit in the news lately. What can companies do to make sure that they're ready to face these threats?
Yeah, first of all, to start, I see a lot of companies waiting and waiting and waiting. And the reality is you need to start. You need to start educating yourself. What is API security? How I'm dealing with API security today. Start asking yourself questions. Do I have a unified API inventory of all the APIs? If a developer develop a new API exposing sensitive data, would I know about it, right, as a security team? So those are the first question you need to ask yourself. And then ask yourself, do I have security standards that I know how to govern them for my APIs? And do I have effective monitoring solutions that when somebody tries to hack my APIs, will I know about it? So I would recommend starting with the OWASP API top 10. These are the top 10 threats for APIs, and start to ask yourself, how well equipped are you to protect yourself against them? And I'll start, first of all, always with visibility. At Salt, we like to take a crawl, walk, run approach. Crawl is the discovery of APIs because you can't protect what you don't know. Walk is to govern those APIs. Again, the doors and the locks and the materials. And lastly, run, which is runtime protection, help you to mitigate threats because you can have the best lock, the best door, but if you don't gonna stop someone try to break in, eventually they will break in. So I would say by start educating yourself, and probably afterwards you will move to a phase of exploring different solutions to see what suits you best.
That makes a lot of sense. What are some of the key trends that you see dominating the cybersecurity market right now?
Yeah, so you can see across cyber, Gen AI is definitely disrupt a lot of spaces because it creates new challenges. Gen AI help developers generate code, so now they're developing 10x faster probably, just by write me an API that do X and Y, and in a minute you can see a fully functional API. Process that usually takes days or weeks suddenly being done in minutes. So what does that mean? It's great for the business and innovation, but it's not great for security because that means a lot of APIs are popping like mushrooms after the rain, and it's getting out of control. So definitely we see in the Gen AI area two main challenges created in the last year. The first one is the visibility is becoming even a more difficult problem because you can develop faster. And secondarily is the use of third-party APIs. So we see a lot of developers sending customer data, sensitive data, to a ChatGPT-like or Gemini or other Gen AI APIs. And security teams do not have proper data governance to ensure what data leaving their environment to a third party. So those are the two main challenges I see that introduced recently because of Gen AI.
All right, this is all very cutting edge. How do you see API security evolving over the next year?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. First of all, to say that APIs, you can think about it as, because every application has an API, and also you have APIs on all applications. So essentially APIs are bigger than applications. So every domain, every security control you have for application, you will need it for API as well. Because essentially app and API becomes almost the same. So everything you can think of from a runtime perspective for bot mitigation, fraud, runtime protection, all the way to an early stage in the life cycle of an API, like develop securely, test APIs, govern the security posture for APIs. So I can see how these domains are rapidly expanding to more and more use cases because essentially anything you do to secure application, the first and core component of this app is an API. So every existing domain for application will move to be part of API security over time.
Got it. Now, what are some best practices that you could advise businesses to improve their API security?
Yeah, so start by at the source. So when you develop an API, right there in development, start to document APIs. You want to get a full inventory of your APIs because again, you cannot protect what you don't know. So really start to incorporate to developers best practices of documenting their APIs, like formal standards like Open API Spec or Swagger. Afterwards, move up the ladder and start to govern and build a document of what a good API looks like, what security standards should be incorporated to make sure that when you release an API, it's actually safe and secure. And if you don't have security standards, at Salt, we actually released a document that helps companies adopt best-in-class standards to make it easier. And lastly, start to incorporate monitoring controls against attacks, especially against sensitive data. So I would say start by documenting, putting your security standards, what you want it to be. Before you even govern it, you need to understand what you're looking to enforce and govern. And lastly, start to incorporate monitoring tools to ensure that nobody can try to hack your APIs and it goes unnoticed.
All right, we'll leave it there. My thanks to Roey Eliyahu, the co-founder and CEO of Salt Security. I'm Jarrett Banks, signing off from the Nasdaq Market Site.